This is a video about the Battle of Ramillies, which took place on 23 May 1706 in what is now Belgium. It was fought during the War of Spanish Succession, 1701 to 1714, and one of the major causes was who would become the next king of Spain. The countries involved included France, Spain, Bavaria on one side, and Britain, Holland, and the Austrian Empire on the other. Each side proposed that their contender should become king. One of the major regions over which the war was fought covered modern Belgium and Holland, known collectively as the Low Countries and the surrounding areas. It was here that two of the main armies fought for control of both the territory and its key fortresses. The commander of the British and Allied army was John Churchill, Duke of Marlborough. He was considered one of the leading military generals with a very good understanding of strategy, tactics, and logistics. He was to become famous for his four major victories, including Ramillies. In addition to his military achievements, Marlborough was successful at controlling the often fractious allies, who had to be persuaded to support his audacious operations. Opposing Marlborough was François de Neufville, Duke of Valois, a Marshal of France and a friend of the French king, Louis XIV, known as the Sun King. Valois was not considered in the same league as Marlborough, although he planned to defeat him on the battlefield using defensive tactics. These entailed defending a series of fortified villages located behind streams and marshy ground. The two armies were fairly even in numbers, with Marlborough commanding about 69,000 men and Valois commanding about 62,000 men. Marlborough had a significant advantage in artillery, with about 120 guns to Valois' 70 guns. The armies were deployed with cavalry on the two wings and infantry in the center, covering a frontage of about 6 kilometers. The terrain was relatively flat and open, although rolling low hills did obscure observation. The deployment was slow, with the troops spending the morning maneuvering into position as determined by their commanders. Marlborough planned to launch an attack on his right towards Autre-Église, and then pull back once the enemy was committed to its defense. He then planned to attack on the left using his considerable cavalry force. Finally, he would launch his main attack in the center against Ramillies. Valois was content to react to the maneuvers of his opponent. He was confident that his was a strong position and the enemy would be hampered by the waterways and wet ground which had been degraded by rain prior to the battle. The game that our two teams played did not follow the historical battle. The initial deployments were very similar to the original ones. It is often difficult to reproduce a battle even when the players are familiar with the history. In this game, there was no one on the British and Allied side who channeled Marlborough. There were certainly opportunities to do so. War games use a combination of factors in addition to the rules to reenact history. Luck is one of the key factors, and the rolling of dice often trumps the best plans. Veteran players have often snatched defeat from the jaws of victory with a series of bad dice rolls. For most of our games, the players have the choice of picking a side or letting a dice roll decide. Most of the French players were more experienced with the rules, although winning or losing is not as important as having a good game. There were 3 players on each side. Despite the complexity of the historical battle plans, there was little planning done by either side. Each player was able to familiarize themselves with the troops under their command. The game was conducted with a general advance by Marlborough across the entire front. It looked impressive as the British, Dutch, German, and Danish troops moved forward to lock horns with the French, Spanish, and Bavarian troops. Things started to go wrong as the advance faltered. The massive cavalry melee on the French right flank heavily favored the French, who had their best units in the front ranks. In the center, the British and Allied infantry were unable to face their opponents and soon started to withdraw. On the French left, the wet ground significantly slowed the British and Allies. Nothing was going right for Marlborough. The game was continued for many hours, much longer, than the 4 hours of the historical battle. It became obvious from the mounting casualties that Marlborough was not going to succeed that day. Despite the different outcome, all of the players enjoyed the game.